Oh boy, we got a live one today, guys. Democrats are admitting that Democrat admits Georgia Trump case has all kinds of problems. And former President Donald Trump has just been released. Yeah, let's first, before we dive into this, I want you guys to hear from Donald Trump on this current situation just as he approaches his airplane.
Sad day for America. This should never happen. If you challenge an election, you should be able to challenge an election. I thought the election was a rigged election, a stolen election, and I should have every right to do that. As you know, you have many people that you've been watching over the years do the same thing, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Stacey Abrams or many others. When you have that great freedom to challenge, you have to be able to, otherwise you're going to avert dishonest elections. What has taken place here is a travesty.
And so right now, Donald Trump is basically defending his stand here. Basically, he's claiming that there is election interference here, and all of these different charges, the indictments that are coming down. His argument is that essentially his opponent, President Joe Biden, is using the Department of Justice as his bouncers to basically take out his opponent. Now, I don't know what you guys think about this. I'm not sure what your stance is on this, but this is basically the stance of former President Donald Trump here. And, the interesting thing, though, is that a lot of people are actually saying that there is really no evidence. There's no legitimate case here. And the timing of everything coming after Donald J. Trump at this point is literally making it very, very obvious that these aren't legitimate charges. They want to make sure that Trump cannot compete in the 2024 elections because Democrats, liberals believe that if Donald Trump competes, that he will win the presidency. Now, I don't know what you guys' take on this is, but this is what I'm gathering based on what I'm seeing and also based on what I'm hearing. But also, very interestingly, some news came out about essentially some admissions of guilt, perhaps.
Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee are demanding Fulton County DA FANI WILLIS answer questions over her, quote, politically motivated prosecution. All right, here to react is former House Judiciary Committee senior.
Politically motivated prosecution. This is exactly what we're talking about here, right, guys? Like, do we have a legitimate case against Donald J. Trump, or are these charges literally like speed bumps to slow him down or to ultimately take him off the game board altogether?
Counsel Julian Epstein. Julian, great to see you. Legally, when you saw the mugshot, everyone had a different emotion, but legally, as the president gets set to find out when he's eventually going to get into court with 18 others, is this a strong case? Is this a case you would have brought if you were Miss Willis?
I don't think it is a particularly strong case. And good morning, Brian. I don't think it's a particularly strong case. I think, look, I did not vote for Donald Trump, and I was very critical of the January 6th activities and the riot and the raid on the Capitol. I still think that if you are going to bring a case against the former president, it has got to be a compelling case, not just to 12 jurors, but to the country as a whole. I'm not sure that this does that. I think there are a number of questions. The first question I have is that I have not heard a good answer to is how did it take the local prosecutors, and I'm saying this as a Democrat, how did it take the local prosecutors?
Wow, he's a Democrat, and he admitted to how he was not in support. And in fact, he questioned a lot of the activities that took place on January 6th. A Democrat here is looking at this and saying, these are some very, very questionable accusations. And he himself doesn't even believe that they're strong.
There's 3.5 years, nearly 4 years to bring this case. Yeah. Why have they not answered the question about FANI Willis's conflict of interest? She held a fundraiser for the opponent of one of the targets of this investigation. We haven't heard any answer to that question. Third, generally when a state and a federal government take on a very similar, almost identical case, and this is very similar to the case of the Justice Department on the January 6th matter, the state would have to have a rather distinct and articulable interest, a separate interest. What is the strong interest the state has here that is not being served by the federal prosecution? So I have real questions about sort of the Democrats say they are just sort of playing it by the books. They're just looking for accountability.
Accountability 4 years later.
That's fine, but I think the Democratic elites and the left elites in both the legal and the political world are going to answer some of these questions. I think beyond that, there are problems with this case, the way it's structured. The RICO case, 19 defendants, 41 counts, hundreds of overt acts. Some of the overt acts that are included are things like tweets and press releases and public statements by President Trump declaring his victory. The things that are all protected by the First Amendment. And I think the case is going to be, as you and I talked about this last week, Brian, I think the central arguments of this case are going to be questionable. I mean, the case really rests on two essential arguments. First, that when President Trump said to Rossenberger, find me 11,780 votes, when he said that, was he asking Rossenberger to falsify the votes? And I think that is the presumption of what the prosecution.
He won't say no.
Now, okay, find me 11,000 whatever votes. Okay, if you're a prosecuting attorney and you're coming after Donald J. Trump saying that you were basically telling someone else to go and fabricate 11,000 votes, you really can't prove that. He said go find them. Now, he didn't say go make them. He didn't say we need you to, like, there was really no incriminating evidence to suggest that Donald is actually saying, make up 11,000 fake votes so I can win this thing. That's kind of like saying, hey, find my keys in the basement, right? Well, you're assuming that the keys are in the basement. You're assuming that your keys are in your basement. But, if you have a 3-story house with a basement, a main floor, and an upstairs, well, if the keys aren't in the basement, then there's no keys to be found in the basement. But maybe the keys are somewhere else in the house. But if you think that there are legitimately 11,000 votes that are out there that were not accurately counted, then the statement, go find me 11,000 votes, is legitimate, in my opinion.
Right. He would say no. And I think him simply saying, find me 11,780 votes, I think that is a matter of interpretation, but I don't know that that's necessarily evidence that he's looking to falsify the votes. I think the other question is, sorry to be long-winded on this, I think the other question is this issue about false elector, this issue about this false slate of electors. This essentially relied on a legal theory of some of the president's attorneys on the reading of the 12th Amendment, that the vice president has a sole discretion to turn down certain electors from certain states. I think that's a bizarre and extreme theory.
Right.
A couple of very conservative attorneys hold it. I don't know that holding that theory or acting on it is necessarily criminal. So I think there's all kinds of problems in this case.
Oh man, like I don't see how this goes anywhere. I think that this is a huge waste of time. Donald J. Trump's got a wonderful, beautiful plane. I wonder how he manages to afford that thing. It's like having your own freaking Delta airplane just all to yourself. That's just freaking amazing. Like when I think of a private jet, I think of like maybe a 12-seater or something like that. But this literally looks like a full-size commercial jet for one person. I know I'm getting a little bit off topic on that one, but literally he's just flying back and forth, showing up for these different court cases that are like literally just a big, huge waste of time and resources.
And we've talked about that. Julian, we booked you because you were senior counsel on House Judiciary back in the day. Chief counsel for the Democrats. Thank you very much. Makes that a much better business card. Now it sounds like the House Republicans, under the direction of Jim Jordan, they're going after FANI Willis, and they're trying to figure out whether or not she collaborated with the Biden administration. We saw this with Alvin Bragg. He opens the case against Trump here in New York City. Then the Republicans went after him, had a field hearing and stuff like that. What do you make of the Republicans going after the local DA?
I don't know at the end of the day that it's going to have all of that much difference. I don't think it had a big impact in New York. I think the New York prosecution is a travesty as well. I've written about that. I did a piece in the Wall Street Journal about that. I think it was an awful case. I think,
Man, I don't know, guys. I think that this is a big, huge waste of time. I think that they're, just trying to come after Trump for anything that they can to try to sabotage this man's run for 2024 presidential, status. That's my personal take. Now, this has got to be a very, very expensive litigation for Donald Trump. And it's got me wondering, what does Donald Trump invest his money in? Like how does he afford all this stuff? Now, obviously, Donald Trump's got investments in all of his different real estate holdings in New York City, hotels. He's got Trump Plaza. He's got, the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. There's so many different places, real estate holdings that he has. But where else does he put his money? So Donald Trump is flush with cash. After leaving the White House, he refinanced the San Francisco office tower. He sold his DC hotel, leaving him with an estimated $425 million war chest. And I'm pretty sure he's got a lot more than that outside of that. That's not everything. So where has he invested all this money, right? So this recent financial disclosure came out and it talks about it. So most of this money is held in safe investments, which makes sense for a guy who's 76 years old. And if you're worth that much money, you're not really trying to aggressively pursue aggressive investment growth, if that makes sense. It's more like, hey, let me just keep what I got. I'm not trying to risk it that much. I do want it to grow, but not that much, right? So Donald Trump maintains a portfolio of riskier real estate assets and might need a few $100 million to handle some legal issues, obviously. And this is exactly why we're looking into this. This is not cheap. I can only imagine how much it costs to own and operate that plane, just flying back and forth to meet up with all his different court hearings, right? In fact, if it turns out to be illegitimate, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump ends up trying to sue either President Biden, the Department of Justice, the Fulton County prosecutors, Alvin Bragg personally, who knows, right? To help him to recoup a lot of these expenses that he's been burning through just trying to keep himself out of jail. But that's another story. His disclosure lists the value of each asset in broad ranges, making it very difficult to know exactly how much Donald Trump has in his different investments. But it does look like the bulk is sitting in bonds, treasuries, and money market funds. Stocks make up a good portion of the rest. Donald Trump holds some blue chip companies like Procter & Gamble, JP Morgan Chase, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. And there's a small slither of composed of mutual funds and exchange traded funds and some gold in there. The former president's largest equity positions is in a non-bank lender named Owl Rock Capital Corporation, founded by a trio of veteran financiers from Blackstone, KKR, and Goldman Sachs. Donald Trump holds $5 million to $25 million of stock in the company. According to this disclosure report, looks like the company's chairman, David Delalio, lent money to the Trump's Castle Casino and Hotel in Atlantic City during the late 1980s and joined the board of Trump Entertainment Resorts. His investment in Owl Rock makes a lot of sense to wealth manager Lori Van Duzen of LW Advisors. Quote, we have emerged into a great company for credit strategies like this. With tighter credit and lending conditions and a slowing economy, there's a lot of need for providers of liquidity and restructuring. My sense is that is why he would want to own this. Interesting. So that is kind of a little bit of insight on where Donald Trump's investing his cash. And I actually found a older but more detailed excerpt. This one's actually from 2017, but generally speaking, Donald Trump is more about running his businesses, and he's going to be more involved with his businesses, in my opinion, than trying to move stocks around. So I'm pretty sure whatever he held in 2017 is probably very similar to what he holds today, because the more actively you trade, the more you're going to be hit with short-term capital gains and increasing your amount of taxes owed. And if we look back at, the information that was released regarding Trump's taxes, he didn't pay a whole lot of taxes. So chances are he didn't get hit with a whole lot of these short-term capital gains taxes. And in turn, that will make me think that whatever he held in terms of investments back in 2016, 2017, probably holds him today. And so, so it says here, serving presidents typically sell their stock holdings to create a blind serving presidents typically sell their stock holdings or create a blind trust to avoid conflicts of interest. The latest financial disclosure form includes publicly traded stocks that President Trump owned during the 16-month period, and from which he has since divested. So looks like if we scroll down here, presidential stock portfolio, three things stand out when looking at President Trump's holdings. He is diversified with holdings in approximately 100 companies across 8 sectors, from financials to basic materials, healthcare, and industrials. And it's funny because, like, when I think of Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump as the real estate investor, Donald Trump as a businessman who leverages real estate to run business operations while benefiting from the capital appreciation of owning the underlying real estate where the business operates. I don't really think of him as like a stock investor. So this is interesting side of him to see. The president used 4 different brokerage firms to handle his investments. I wonder if it's going to tell us what brokerage firms he used. The president likes dividends. Interesting, kind of like Warren Buffett. Almost 90 of the approximately 100 companies held paid a dividend. Interesting. That is like the same process that Warren Buffett follows whenever he's investing in a company. He's got to pay him a dividend. That said, a very small portion of the president's wealth was invested in individual stocks with an estimated value of $40 million based on calculations from Fortune. The largest investment actually held was Apple, with holdings of $600,000 to $1.2 million. And so what they're showing here is, okay, he's holding about between $600,000 and $1.2 million in Apple shares, Apple stock. He's got Microsoft stock somewhere between $300,000 and $600,000, PepsiCo $150,000 to $350,000, and JP Morgan Chase between $100,000 and $251,000. And one thing all investors can take as a lesson from President Trump's portfolio is the importance of diversification. By investing in so many companies across a wide variety of sectors, his holdings could weather turbulence caused by market volatility, seasonality, and more. Probably wouldn't survive a pandemic again, but I don't think anything could. President Trump invested with 4 different brokerages, perhaps not a concern for a billionaire, but there are some advantages of using multiple brokers. So, for example, different brokerage firms provide different access to stock research, analysis, and other investing resources. Then there is the matter of the SIPC, also known as the Securities Investor Protection Corporation, which protects investors who have cash or securities at SIPC member brokerage firms. If a brokerage firm encounters financial trouble, the SIPC may step in to protect investors with a limit of $500,000, including $250,000 for cash. Interesting. I think the FDIC needs to bump up their coverages from $250,000 to $500,000 as well. So if your portfolio grows to exceed this protection threshold, it may be worth considering having your portfolio divided among several brokers. So if you're only covered up to $500,000, but you're like a billionaire, like, you know how many freaking brokerage accounts you need to have at different brokerage firms to be fully covered, to cover your whole billion dollars, since you're only covered for the first $500,000, that would be rather cumbersome. So yeah, but going back to President Trump's affinity for dividend players, keep in mind that of the 10% annual return the S&P 500 has delivered on average since 1928, not all of that is from stock price appreciation. In fact, 44% of those returns came from dividends, according to Standard & Poor's. So this is very interesting. This just underscores the value and the power of compound interest, specifically coming from dividend paying stocks. So I want to know from you guys. You guys want to learn more about dividend paying stocks? This is what former President Donald Trump's investing in, and clearly there's a power to this passive income generated from the dividend paying stocks. A lot of these stocks will pay every single quarter. Some stocks pay once a year. Some stocks will pay once a month. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys would like to learn more about dividend paying stocks, and also let me know what the most interesting thing that we discussed in today's conversation was. Hit me up in the comment section down below. Drop a quick like for the video. Also, if you made it this far, definitely subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you guys, and I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Y'all be safe.